This story is going to sound like a joke. It sounds like a parody of some crazy Texas gun nut, but sadly, this is 2016 United States of America, and it is all too real. 42-year-old mother and ardent pro-gun activist Christy Sheets shot and killed her two daughters, 22-year-old Taylor and 17-year-old Madison, on a street in Houston, Texas. The mom was ultimately shot dead herself by police. This reportedly started as a family argument on what neighbors say was the birthday of the father of the two girls. The argument started inside the house. It spilled out onto the street, and a witness said that the two girls tried escaping with their father when Christy Sheets started shooting. When full sheer police arrived to the scene, the two daughters were lying on the street in front of the home. One of the girls died on the street. The other was flown to a hospital in critical condition, but could not be saved. Cops showed up, ended up shooting Christy Sheets dead, who was holding a pistol, reportedly refusing to drop it, according to police. Now, the husband, Jason Sheets, managed to flee, called the police from a neighbor's house. Police records show that police had been called to this house multiple times. Unclear, at least at this point, what they were called for. Christy Sheets, apparently the picture of an NRA executive's dream, the epitome of the good woman with a gun, the pro-gun activist. Here is one Facebook post of hers. She posted a meme that said, "I have 10 guns. Obama wants 8 of my guns. How many guns do I have? That's right. I have 10 guns." And of course, how she imagined she would use a gun versus how she actually used a gun. Here is another Facebook post from Christy Bird Sheets. "It would be horribly tragic if my ability to protect myself or my family were to be taken away. But that's exactly what Democrats are determined to do by banning semi-automatic handguns." Another of the National Rifle Association's good gals with a gun. I wonder if her daughters were bad gals, I guess in this case without guns. And as I've said last week, mass shootings are a problem. We have all these different gun-related scenarios that are problematic. Victims of homicide, which are the overwhelming majority, not mass shootings, the overwhelming majority of gun crime, gun shooting victims. Obviously, if it's a gun, it's a shooting, of shooting victims. They are killed by someone that they know. Should the girls have been armed and ready to return fire against their mom? I mean, in what way would being armed when you're just having a conversation with your mom be the picture of what it is the NRA is recommending by saying arm everybody?
Yeah. More guns, probably not the answer here.
Yeah.
Fewer guns, maybe the answer. Yeah, that's probably the one we were looking for. I wonder if this is just so unusual. I wonder if this was just
which
a
part of it is
complete mental
unusual,
breakdown. Or not the shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, but a mother shooting and killing her two daughters in the street.
Yeah, most of the time when people kill family members, it's so-called accidental shootings and only one person dies. So the fact that this was deliberately shooting both of your kids does make a difference in the United States, which is notable. We're sort of running out of new ways to kill people with guns, new scenarios. We've sort of seen them all. This one is a new spin, tragically so.
Yes, and clearly not a good woman with a gun. The
No.
problem is that anyone is capable of this type of behavior. And
Right.
when everyone has a gun, this type of thing happens more often.
Let's talk about the causes of this Brexit vote, where the UK, 71, just under 72% turnout, saw 51.9% of those who chose to vote voting to exit the European Union. There's the economic side, and then there's the immigrant fear side. So in recent years, we've seen a number of economic problems start to enter the European Union. You know about Greece and the debt crisis. Generally speaking, there has been concern, and you can't really unwind the economic and the immigrant concerns. There has been concern from some, many depending on which area we're looking at, that the influx of immigrants and refugees with this free movement between EU member states has become a drag on the economy, both in terms of the job market as well as the welfare, state, and social program costs. Both of these are areas that influenced those who wanted to exit the European Union in the United Kingdom. Entrants from Romania and Bulgaria, for example, have been entering the European Union, and many of them finding their way to the United Kingdom. And while running for re-election back in 2015, now resigned Prime Minister David Cameron vowed that he would cut the net inflow of people to the UK to under 100,000 a year. Was not able to do that, Lewis. Last year, that number hit 330,000. And so the big picture here is sort of twofold. Economic side, would the UK not be better off separating from what are problems with the EU economies and particularly the economies of certain EU member states? But you can't really separate that from the broader situation of immigration, which has become very, very concerning, particularly to many neo-nationalist groups around around Europe. That being said, I did get one email, Lewis, that said, "Hey, David, I'm liberal. When you look at the pros and cons of Brexit, consider that America can absorb refugees and immigrants in a way that Britain simply cannot because of the size of Britain. The national healthcare system is different than what you have in the United States, in spite of some of the state healthcare safety nets. So even some liberals are understandably concerned about the economic impacts of what's going on with immigration, and ultimately, 72% turnout, voting 52% to get out."
Mm-hmm. Well, when you look at it as just a sheer numbers thing, what was it? 300 something thousand refugees into the UK last year.
330.
Okay, so times are a bit different right now, and we know why there might be more refugees than usual. But still, think about that just as a numbers game. I mean, down the line, if you have, let's say, I'll be generous, 150, 200,000 a year coming into your country, they all have children. Every year, I mean, the numbers multiply so quickly. And it is a small country. And based on their, economy, economic system, healthcare, all that, it could be a huge problem.
Let's talk about, by country, how the UK voted, because very different results if you break this down based on location within the UK. England voted 53 to 46 to exit, and Wales voted 52 to 47 to exit. However, Scotland voted 62 to 38 to remain part of the UK, and Northern Ireland voted 56 to 44 to remain in the UK. You can slice this a few other ways as well. Urban tended to want to stay in the UK, whereas rural tended to want to leave the UK. And I think we're good with this graphic, Lewis. Younger people were more likely to want to stay in the EU. Older wanted to leave, and I think I said before, leave or stay the UK. I'm talking about the EU. Younger tended to want to stay within the EU. Older tended to want to leave the EU. And now there are questions about Scotland. There are questions about Northern Ireland, even questions about Gibraltar. Scotland says it is not democratic that they as a country voted to remain in the EU, but by virtue of being part of the United Kingdom, they now are bound, to the extent that this is a non-binding resolution, but to the extent that the UK will move forward on this, they now, in spite of as a country wanting to remain, have voted, are part of a bigger vote to exit. A second independence referendum is now being talked about in Scotland, specifically over this issue. Northern Ireland voted to stay. Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness said that the impact on Northern Ireland would be very profound and that Ireland really should now reconsider reunification. So look at all of the political fallout of what's going on. And lastly, Gibraltar, which is this small peninsula off the south coast of Spain, very small place, has been a British territory since 1713. Gibraltar voted to remain in the UK. As far as Spain is concerned, including what their foreign minister said, this opens the door to a Spanish flag on the rock, to quote the Spanish foreign minister. If you go to Gibraltar and you say, hey, you can be part of the UK, but you'll be out of the EU, or you can stay in the EU, but you become part of Spain, all of a sudden that possibility becomes more compelling. So endless political repercussions possibly here.
Yes, and depending on how messy it gets, maybe nothing happens at all. But it's interesting to see this happening. And certainly leaving the UK is probably sounding pretty good to many people right now in Scotland, in Northern Ireland. Interesting stuff.
Bernie Sanders gave an interview on MSNBC, which was for a few hours considered a blockbuster. He seemed to be saying that his campaign was effectively done. Although he wasn't officially ending it, Bernie Sanders said that he would vote for Hillary Clinton in November. And he said the top priority, which we've also agreed is the top priority, is stopping Donald Trump in November. Here is Bernie Sanders on MSNBC going viral instantly, people going completely crazy.
Decision.
Turning back to our country's broiling politics, are you going to vote for Hillary Clinton in November?
Yes. Yeah, I think the issue right here is I'm going to do everything I can to defeat Donald Trump.
Right.
I think Trump, in so many ways, will be a disaster for this country if he were to be elected president. We do not need a president whose cornerstone of his campaign is bigotry, is insulting Mexicans and Latinos. And
this went viral. He didn't say, well, my priority is being the nominee. He actually said, yes, I am going to vote for Hillary Clinton. This exploded. An hour later, Bernie Sanders was on CNN, and he used what some people are calling noticeably different language about whether he would vote for Hillary Clinton. The answer was no longer yes. Take a look at the interview from an hour later.
We look forward to doing it going forward. First, let's deal with some specific political house cleaning, and then we'll get to Brexit and we'll get to the implications.
Right.
No endorsement of Hillary Clinton. Simply stated, when the day comes in November and Sanders has to cast his vote, to whom does it go?
in all likelihood it'll go to Hillary Clinton.
When you say in all likelihood, what percentage of margin of error is it?
I don't want to parse words here. Here's where we are right now, Chris.
Please.
Yeah.
I believe this country faces enormous crises. I believe our politics and our economics are dominated by big money interests. I believe the Democratic Party has got to become the party of working people.
So, first interview, MSNBC, will you vote for Hillary Clinton in November? Yes. Second interview, CNN, will you vote for Hillary Clinton? In all likelihood, yes. Was this because of blowback after the first segment earlier in the day? Bernie supporters online were going apoplectic, Lewis. I received a ton of tweets and emails, all sorts of stuff from them saying this is not over. Bernie Sanders won California. He's taking it to the convention. Hillary's getting indicted, et cetera, et cetera. It's not clear even Bernie Sanders thinks that at this point. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay. The big picture is that the semantic difference between, yes, I'm voting for Hillary Clinton, and in all likelihood, I'm voting for Hillary Clinton, doesn't really matter, because back in May of 2015, not May of 2016, not this past May, last May of 2015, Bernie Sanders said he would support the Democratic nominee. Here is a transcript from an ABC News interview with George Stephanopoulos from May 3rd. George Stephanopoulos said, if you lose in this nomination fight, will you support the Democratic nominee? Yes, I have in the past. Stephanopoulos following up, not going to run as an independent. Sanders, no, absolutely not. I've been very clear about that. I think this is much ado about nothing, Lewis. It is very, very clear that Hillary Clinton is going to be the Democratic nominee. Yeah, you can throw scenarios at me of what if she gets indicted and blah, 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 blah. I don't believe that that is going to happen. This blew up, and I truly don't get why. And I don't even see any practical operational difference between what Bernie Sanders said on MSNBC and an hour later on CNN.
Let's disclose again that we're both Bernie fans and we both wanted Bernie to win this thing.
Yes.
Because now I have to say this. Is this going to be the nail in the coffin for the Bernie fanatics?
Well, I don't know, because even after Bernie Sanders said he was voting for Hillary Clinton, I was getting emails from people saying Bernie will be the nominee. I don't know. H.A. Goodman, who we interviewed very recently, said he heard something about Hillary's getting indicted any day and Bernie's going to be the nominee. I'll go a step further. I don't know that if Hillary gets indicted and drops out, which is not happening, I don't even know that Bernie gets the nomination then. I think in that case, there will be some kind of decision made. It's not going to by default go to Bernie Sanders. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying I think even if Hillary gets indicted post-convention, and we're running out of time for it to happen pre-convention, I still don't know that Bernie Sanders gets the nomination. Call me crazy.
Well, if even Bernie Sanders realizes that he's not going to be the nominee, maybe the only reason he is still in this is because there is something looming that might mean pre-convention.
Well, that's the conspiratorial approach. The other side is he wants to be officially in it until the convention, and rightly so that he can try to negotiate elements of his platform to move Hillary Clinton to the left, which I completely respect.
Well, maybe, yeah. But can he even successfully do that? We just heard her speak not too long ago. She seems to be she seems to have all the right talking points for being far left right now, and it just that's ridiculous.
Fox News blew it again. And no, I don't mean that Bill O'Reilly was allowed to broadcast yet again. That's been going on for a long time, as bad as that is. What I mean is that in their reporting about the Brexit vote, which we have broken down in detail earlier in today's show, Fox News incorrectly reported that the UK had voted to leave the United Nations rather than the European Union. I have a bunch of shots here to show you. British PM says he will step down. UK votes to leave UN. Very, very interesting. And a lot of people taking pictures of their TVs. And it went on for 3 or 4 minutes, reportedly, Lewis, which in television time, it might as well be on all day. If for 3 minutes you're going to be reporting that the UK has voted to leave the United Nations. And the problem is, so many Fox News viewers won't even know the difference. This will reinforce wrong ideas about what the hell is going on.
Yeah, Fox News more uninformed. Fox News viewers more uninformed than people who watch no news at all.
Right,
somehow. And this is making things. Well, this is an example of why that happens.
And if you think we're sort of attacking Fox as without evidence and the viewers, various studies over a long period of time have found that primary Fox News viewers, in other words, people who are asked, what TV channel do you primarily get your news from? People who answer, Fox News, they have been shown to be the least informed news consumers. And as Lewis alluded to, they're often knowing less than people who watch no television news whatsoever. Back around the Iraq War, we covered this very good PIPA study, which showed that by and large, people who got most of their news from Fox News, primarily got their news from Fox News, just held basic wrong beliefs, untrue beliefs about the war. They believed that the war in Iraq was generally supported by countries around the world, by people in countries around the world. They believed that there was a connection between Iraq and 9/11, and they believed that weapons of mass destruction had been found in Iraq, all untrue. In late 2010, Stanford University did a study where it was revealed that more exposure to Fox News was associated with more rejection of many mainstream scientist claims about global warming, which now we tend to call it climate change rather than global warming. There was a Fairleigh Dickinson University study in 2012, which showed the exact same thing. Fox News viewers don't know what the hell is going on, and there's been many others. And to be fair, Lewis, Fox News doesn't always get everything wrong. Last week I flipped past Fox News, and they reported that President Obama is the president. So you do get some actual accurate data on Fox News.
That's true. In this case, the United Kingdom does exist.
Yeah.
And there was a vote.
Right. They correctly identified a number of facts that the UK exists. They voted. There's this thing called Brexit. David Cameron was the prime minister. He's resigning. It's not all bad. And it's good to find the silver lining always, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'm just glad that Fox viewers are getting some information that they can use for whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, what they use it for. That's really what we need to be investigating. What are they using this information?
Dinner table conversations.
Yeah. So. Incredible conversations with your conservative uncle at Thanksgiving. Later on this week, 1:15 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, we will be taking your calls. All topics are welcome. All callers are welcome. We don't discriminate on the basis of race, age, gender, sexual orientation, intelligence level, political orientation. Anybody is welcome to call. 617-830-4750 is the number, and we will take calls at 1:15 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. It'll last about 15 minutes. If it's busy, call again. 6 calls we were able to get in last week, Lewis. It went very, very well. We will do it again this week. And we have some incredible stories coming up after my interview with Mark Rosenberg. 10 people were wounded, 2 life-threatening injuries at a rally in front of the state capitol building in Sacramento, California. This appears to have been a rally held by the Traditionalist Workers' Party, as well as the Golden State Skinheads. Over the weekend, counter-protesters showed up, and according to police, about 30 members of these 2 groups showed up for this rally. But 400 counter-protesters showed up. The Sacramento Police Department said that a really big fight broke out. There were people carrying sticks that rushed into the area where the rally was being held. The violence forced the Capitol to be placed on lockdown. And a reporter from the ABC News affiliate in Sacramento said that police taped off the area. You could see blood on the sidewalk of the park where this occurred. Cuts, scrapes, bruises, all sorts of injuries, stabbing, etc. We have video of the chaos that went on there, which we will show you as I give you some of the other details. And authorities stated that there was one gun found in the area during the melee, but that no arrests were made in connection with the violence, which is odd because there's widespread video of people perpetrating violence. The rally was organized by the TWP, which is a group with links to white supremacists. They did have permits to hold the rally at noon on Sunday in front of the Capitol. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center describes the TWP as the political wing of the Traditionalist Youth Network, which aims to, quote, indoctrinate high school and college students into white nationalism. They want to start early. And then what happened was that a counter-protest group called By Any Means Necessary reportedly showed up with wooden bats shouting, F fascists, beat the fascists. And one member, Yvette Filarka, told CNN that she was very, very proud of the counter-protests that produced these levels of violence. So this is very complex, Louis. On the one hand, these neo-Nazis, these white separatists, call them whatever you want, these are the vilest of the vile groups. There is no denying that whatsoever. On the other hand, they had a permit for this protest, and when so-called anti-fascists show up and cheer about doing violence, if indeed it was them who capitalized it, they are stooping to a pretty low level. And this is where this split between traditional progressives and so-called authoritarian leftists who seek to use the right wing or authoritarian means of restricting free speech, this is where the split starts to happen. Anybody who watches this program knows that I find these neo-Nazi, skinhead, call them whatever you want, groups absolutely despicable. They had a permit, and showing up and initiating violence, if that is indeed what happened, is just flat out not productive, never mind unethical.
Yeah. Imagine you were just an outsider to this whole thing.
Right.
And you observe this, right? Now, you know what the original protesters are saying is inflammatory. You know that it's just not the nicest stuff. But then you watch this whole thing unfold. I mean, which side do you when you walk away from it, which side would you rather, hang with, or which side would you feel more comfortable being around?
Well, listen, I'm not going to be comfortable around the neo-Nazis no matter what. Maybe you would be, but I have two Jewish parents. I know you're half Jewish, so I don't know. But
without knowing what the content of their message was.
I see, right. Yeah. Big picture, you're there. You see a group of 30 who has a permit to show up. And then you see a group of 400 show up with sticks and start beating and stabbing the group of 30. Big picture, it doesn't look particularly good for the 400 that show up. I totally get what you're saying, politics aside.
Yeah.
Send me your thoughts on this. This is the type of thing where I often support the message, but I oppose the tactics. And of course, I support the message of being anti-fascist, anti-white nationalist, whatever you want to call it. I don't support showing up to what I've been told was a nonviolent event initially, which they had a permit for, and showing up with sticks and cheering about beating people up. Last week, I talked to you about the growing potential for a delegate revolt against the presumptive Republican nominee, Donald Trump. The problem is it's sort of lose-lose for Republicans. Either Trump is your nominee, which appears to be an absolute runaway train disaster, or you force Trump out, which is another type of disaster because it frames your party correctly as completely undemocratic. Now, there are multiple sources predicting total chaos at the Republican convention in a few weeks. The New York Times' Jeremy Peters reported Monday morning on MSNBC's Morning Joe that there is a high probability of some kind of revolt-type chaos. Here's a short clip of him on Morning Joe yesterday.
That Trump and the RNC are quite nervous about the fact that the convention could get messy. And what you have here is this interesting marriage of convenience between the two, where Trump people who are definitely not party people and party people who are definitely not Trump people have a common goal in preventing the convention from turning into utter chaos. Donald Trump needs to protect his nomination, and the Republican Party, under Reince Priebus, needs to protect the integrity of its nominating process. And if the convention turns into a fight that threatens to deny Donald Trump, the winner of 14 million votes in 37 states, the nomination, that's a real threat to the integrity of the Republican Party's process.
Jeremy.
And then a member of the RNC Rules Committee named Randy Evans said that indeed everybody on the RNC side is gearing up for a big fight, saying, quote, "You're counting on a lot to convince a party regular to throw the convention into chaos, but I wouldn't be telling you the truth to say that it's not a realistic possibility, and everyone is gearing up for it." So a few important points. It's not very likely that this will result in actually ousting Donald Trump as the nominee, but the mere chaos that appears to be likely to happen and the headlines that will bring is not likely to be helpful to Donald Trump as the Republican nominee thinking about the November election, is it?
Casting doubt, making people think that maybe Trump won't be the guy. Yeah, probably not. If this does happen, it's just going to be the best thing ever for Democrats, Dave. And can you just imagine the conflict that it will create, the personal conflicts between politicians and chair members and you name it.
Totally self-destructive.
Yeah, it's going to be brutal.
And lastly, Donald Trump has started to say that it would be illegal for that to happen. That's not true. I mean, it's completely within the bounds of the law. The law doesn't say how the Republican Party can pick their candidate, right? I mean,
the Republican Party dictates their own laws on how they pick candidates.
It's like saying it's against the law to have a chess club where they decide to give the trophy to the second place person. It has nothing to do with the law, right? I mean, we're talking about a group choosing their nominee to run for an election. This has nothing to do with the law, and Donald Trump seems very, very confused about that. Convicted shoplifter and notorious Trump spokesperson Katrina Pierson went on CNN to try to explain that doggone Muslim ban that we've all heard about from Donald Trump many times now, but still fail to understand the specifics of. It did not go well at all. Trump has talked about how he will put the best people around him, and he keeps falling flat on that promise. This is yet another press spokesperson who can't seem to put together even a remotely coherent explanation of anything Trump is proposing to do. So I've got video I'm going to play for you. Katrina Pierson goes on CNN. She tries to sidestep every question about the Muslim ban. And really, how can we expect Katrina Pierson to understand the Muslim ban when it's not even clear Trump understands his own plan? Let's take a look at the first attempt at answering the question.
If you never knew what the ban was to begin with, I know the news media has been reporting that the initial ban was against all Muslims, and that simply was not the case. It was simply for Muslim immigration, and Mr. Trump is simply adding specifics to clarify what his position is, as opposed to what the media has been reporting what it is. There has been no change to this. Mr. Trump still wants to stop individuals from coming into this country who cannot be vetted.
All right, I think we actually have the sound bite of one of his initial
explanations. Okay, so I think we actually,
of the ban.
that should have been the end of that,
is that right, David?
first clip.
All right, let's
there.
listen to that.
There we go. So, okay, now she didn't mention the word Muslim at all, right? She just didn't mention it. We're talking about stopping individuals. So then there's follow-up on that. Let's now take a look at the next piece of this nonsense.
Muslims. And so now he's not going to characterize it as Muslims? Immigrants, and I'm talking about immigrants. You say it's about immigration. I'm talking about immigration. I'm talking about visitors coming to the country.
Well, right, but the initial reports were all Muslims, even extending it to American Muslims, which didn't make any sense. And we can go back to that footage and look. This had nothing to do with American Muslims, or even soldiers for that matter. But Mr. Trump is going to be refining his policy, putting out more specific details, which everyone's been asking for. But there has been no change. He still does not want to allow individuals to come into this country who cannot be vetted.
Individuals or Muslims?
Well, it doesn't matter really where you're coming from, except for the fact of the terrorist nations, which is something that he is adding to this policy to make it more clear.
I love it. It doesn't make any difference where you're coming from, unless you're coming from a terrorist nation. So it does make a difference where you're coming from, right? And then she goes into this total straw man where she says, Mr. Trump never was talking about banning American Muslims from traveling to the U.S. Well, no, why would he? They're American, and they're already in the U.S. I mean, just totally incoherent. And then she ends with this thing, it's about individuals who can't be vetted. no mention of Muslims at all. But then there's a follow-up and she says, well, yes, other than if they're individuals from these hostile nations, which, by the way, are only Muslim. And here we have the next attempt here. It's just horrendous.
Adding to this policy to make it more clear that if you are coming from a hostile nation and you cannot be vetted, absolutely you should not come into this country. But individuals are the same. We cannot allow individuals to come into this country that cannot be vetted.
Okay, but you're talking about terrorist countries, and what we've seen is individuals who are from Belgium, who are from France. I mean, So
that's a great question, right? The Belgium and France question. We just can't get a list of countries, and there's still this back and forth. It doesn't matter what your religion is. We want to vet individuals from hostile nations, which are the Muslim ones, unless it's a country like Belgium and France, where we have seen Muslim terror, but those aren't state-sponsored. And then I believe this is going to be, we have 2 more of these attempts, and it just gets worse and worse.
I mean, those you wouldn't
That's the point.
So you're talking about, so explain who is not allowed in and what countries we're talking about, and also how you're dealing, I mean, in this latest...
An individual that cannot be vetted. As we know, ISIS has exploited passport systems in some of these countries. The individual that came in on the K-1 visa, they didn't even know where she was from initially. If you cannot be vetted, you should not be allowed into this country. And I think that speaks volumes. If we are allowing people into this country where we do not know their intentions, we do not know where they're from, and if they're coming from hostile territories, that is extremely dangerous right now.
How is it not a change if before he was talking about Muslim immigrants, and now you're saying individuals, and the reporting that we have coming from Gloria...
So we have a bunch more clips, but it just goes on like this for a while. We don't need to play anymore. So basically, it's partially Muslims unless you can't be vetted, but location doesn't matter unless it's a hostile location, which we won't name which ones qualify, but religion is not a factor, and this isn't a change unless you're Muslim. I get it, Lewis. Perfectly clear, isn't it?
Well, Donald Trump's whole thing is, I know how to do everything, and I'll tell you all about it once I'm in office. And this is kind of... I mean, it's kind of like, you need me, I'm going to fearmonger, you need me to protect you, so vote me in. That's the whole thing.
At least get a coherent press representative up there. We'll take a break. Big show coming up today. Donald Trump has responded to the horrific triple suicide bombing at Istanbul's airport, for which the Islamic State is, as I've mentioned earlier in the week, suspected, by reminding us that you have to fight fire with fire, and that he likes waterboarding a lot. The story is really representative of what is wrong with American politics and the cult of personality around Donald Trump. I'll explain it to you and explain exactly what I mean. Let's walk through it. We have a terrorist attack in Istanbul. Okay. American politicians, candidates for office, they respond. They're evaluated for their responses. Is that a response that is tough on terror? Is that a response that seems weak on terror? Who would you prefer be in charge of protecting you from terror here in the United States? And then Donald Trump comes out and at a rally in somewhere in Ohio says the following in response to the Istanbul attack, specifically about waterboarding.
Well, they asked me the question. I said, I'll answer that question. They said, what do you think about waterboarding? I said, I like it a lot, and I don't think it's tough enough.
The low information voters hear that. I like waterboarding a lot. And we could hear that clip, right, Lewis? I mean, yeah, that was fine. The low information voters hear that. They don't care that torture has been shown not to work. They don't care that waterboarding is illegal according to international law. Instead of seeing Trump accurately as the guy pushing outlawed and faulty tactics, they see him as strong because he's saying, wow, even this method is not tough enough for me. So in comes John McCain, Arizona Republican senator, 2008 Republican presidential nominee, failed one at that, former prisoner of war who has served in the military, held captive. He tries to inject some logic into this conversation, and he responds to Trump saying, I like waterboarding, by saying the following.
According to the Geneva Conventions, it's a war crime. But perhaps more importantly than that, if you're not into academics and history, is it doesn't work. If you inflict enough pain on someone, that person will tell you whatever they think that you want to hear in order to make the pain stop. It's not the United States of America. It's not what we are all about. It's not what we are. It's not about them. It's about us.
This is a war crime, and it doesn't work. And people will tell you whatever it is you want to hear, that they believe you want to hear, to make the torture stop. Now, McCain is made the bad guy as far as Trump supporters are concerned. This reinforces Trump as strong and McCain as weak, because McCain knows these techniques don't work, doesn't want to break the law, and says that this is not what America does. And then we have, of course, the big picture as it applies to the Istanbul bombing. Who would we have tortured? Who would Trump have waterboarded to prevent that triple suicide bombing? None of it makes sense. This is an exchange which should hurt Donald Trump. But in fact, there are people who are sort of emboldened by it. They say, that's right, I support Trump because he's tough. And it's totally disconnected to every empirical reality about waterboarding.
Well, back when McCain was running, Republicans didn't really seem to like it when he said the same exact thing about waterboarding, about torture.
Right.
It's just, is it human nature to want to torture and punish people who you think are evil, who might have some information that you think is valuable? I don't know. I don't know what to say to that, but I can say the Republicans in the United States seem to be all about it.
Yeah, and many of them are. And of course, there is the contingent, more of the McCain contingent, which seems to be more on this planet as far as the logic and the reasoning and the legality and the morality and also the practicality of it. We can get past all of the sort of moral objections and just take a completely pragmatic approach. And John McCain is absolutely right. And of course, I will reiterate, who would we have waterboarded to prevent the Istanbul airport bombings?